Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Unstoppable podcast. I'm your host, Diana Chen, and I'm joined today by our guest, Jack O'Halloran. He is the co-founder and CEO of SKALE Network, which is an open source blockchain network for scaling Ethereum based dApps. This is one of the most exciting projects out there, especially right now, as everybody's talking about L2s and rollups and all this stuff. We're going to talk to Jack all about what SKALE is, how it's different, how it's similar to and different from other L2s that you might have seen out there. And we'll try to present all of this information in an easy to understand way for all you newbies listening. And then I'll also let Jack get deeper into the weeds for any devs and technical people listening who want to know more of the ins and outs of exactly how the technology works. So thank you so much, Jack, for being here, and welcome.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. Hi, everybody.
Awesome. So before we dive into SKALE, I'm curious to know a little bit about your personal background and how you discovered crypto. So take us all the way back to when you first heard about crypto. What was it that caught your attention and took you down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, well, so I actually started my career working in cryptography. So I worked in mobile computing, mobile security. I was with a company called Good Technology that was acquired by Motorola for about $500 million back in 2007. And that was my first startup. And what we had was a fully cryptographic messaging system that the US government, the White House, the FBI, the US Senate all used, and along with, I think, 90 of the Fortune 100 companies. And just randomly, my co-founder, Stan, actually did our cryptography cert back then. We had a FIPS certification, which is a very high crypto cert. So that was my first introduction, but it was not like, cool, sexy, fun stuff. It wasn't like people weren't launching NFTs. They were just sending messages in an encrypted format, and it wasn't decentralized at all. So that was where I started, and then ended up becoming a founder of a company that was called Incentiline. We launched a digital currency platform in 2008, where NASA was our one of the first customers, and along with many Fortune 500s who were going to leverage this currency internally as a mechanism to allocate resources. And then, that lasted a very short time because the market crashed in 2008, as many listening may remember. And we ended up pivoting and saying, hey, we have this deep analytics system. I ended up building a company called Octana that almost every biotech and pharma in the world uses. It's a machine learning AI platform. So for optimization of communications with healthcare professionals and just all of the data sources and functionality that goes within a big global pharmaceutical company or life science company. So I've been in tech for a long time and traditional tech doing B2B, but have these, this background of digital currencies and cryptography just coincidentally. And then when I first read the Bitcoin Whitepaper in 2011, I was hooked. And that was kind of where I went down the rabbit hole. But I didn't ever think it could be a career for me. I thought of it just as currency and a way to give power to people by using these symmetrical databases to disintermediate, these brick and mortar, really government supported banking entities, which I, don't have any problem with them. They add value too, but it was nice to have currency that wasn't part of the, global banking arm. But then when Ethereum launched, that's really where my imagination was captured. And the whole concept of smart contracts that I think is still being dramatically underestimated by most people, the power of smart contracts and the power of Ethereum. And when I saw that, I recognized three things that came together for me. And I'd already been a founder and been at multiple startups and had success in my career. So I was, I think at a fortunate position where I could be very selective about what I wanted to do. And for me, I had three things. Like one, I wanted to do something that did good for the world. And two, I wanted to do something that was really technically interesting and fun. And three, I wanted to do something like, hey, you could still be a monetary success for all the people working on it. And blockchain companies are one of those few things that are interesting on all those levels. You can actually do good for people and while making money. And usually those things are diametrically opposed. Someone's like extracting value from somebody, and blockchain creates these win-win-win scenarios all over the place. So that's my kind of a short intro of how I got into the space.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you pretty much like always inherently at least understood the concept behind cryptography, and then just like a quick curiosity thing too. So when you first read the Bitcoin white paper, did it just like make sense to you instantly since you sort of come from that background, or did it still take you a minute to understand like what the hell is going on?
Oh yeah, it definitely took me a while. It it I think some people can get in and they just read it and immediately know what's happening. I started you know I got it, and then over time I recognized the power of what it could do. And so it's an amazing, piece of art in the sense that this is a technology that was built in 2008 that hasn't been surpassed in terms of the viability of what it does, and in part because it's elegantly simple, and it does what what it's supposed to do. And hey, yeah, there's other blockchains that can do dramatically more than Bitcoin, but they're trying to do different things. So I'm not a maximalist in any way. I just feel like they, different products provide different services. So maybe I understood more than other people, but when I read it now, yeah, I realize how little I actually knew back then as well.
No, for sure. Okay, so you discover Ethereum, you get into smart contracts, you sort of identify some of those problems, and I imagine that's where this idea for Scale was born in your head. Is you're like diving deep into the smart contracts, into Ethereum, building DApps, and you're like, okay, but there has to be a better like this is not perfect. How can we improve on this? I'm guessing that's sort of how this idea for Scale started.
Yeah, and so for me, I saw so many business models where I could create a marketplace or a market environment where the workers and the users own the network. And when you can do that, worker and user owned marketplaces will beat essentially owned marketplaces where Uber's taking 30% of every cut, right? And I was actually looking deeper into this whole B2B world around data ownership and data stewardship and data monetization, and especially at more enterprise levels and business levels, and saw a lot of opportunities. And one thing I recognized was, well, one, I'm just too early, and these ideas are going to happen someday. The other piece was the ideas I had were not at all feasible technically due to the speed and cost of running on Ethereum. And I was introduced to Stan Kladko, my co-founder and our CTO, he's got a whole, like 20 plus years of cryptography experience, world-renowned physics researcher. He was at Stanford, then joined the Java virtual machine team at Sun and built a large part of the Java virtual machine, and worked on an early startup with Dan Bonnet back in 2000 doing cryptography. And he said, big data experience and networking experience. So he had also like all these ideas for these applications. And all of us wanted to build dApps, and we realized that we couldn't do it. And Stan said, well, I actually can. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and here's what I'm building. And I was like, so why are you going to build 4 applications? So doesn't sound like a good business model. And he's like, well, because I can, because I am designing this scalability layer. And then it just our brains came together and clicked, and we're like, well, let's build this for other people. There's a lot of people like us that want to build products on Ethereum. And this is a way that we can build that adds value back to Ethereum. It's built on Ethereum. It scales Ethereum native. A lot of other blockchains extract value from Ethereum. Scale adds value to Ethereum and adds revenue. If you want to pay for a Scale chain, if you want to stake on the Scale network, if you want to send a token, it all pays Ethereum. I can get into that later, but yeah, that was really the genesis as like a user. And that's usually when you have a good idea and you're at a real pain point, is when you have a problem yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And so I've heard you talk about Scale as like an L2 plus solution. And I'd love for you to dive deeper into that and explain sort of how Scale is different from, building like an L1 on Ethereum versus building like an L2. What is special or unique about Scale that other L2 solutions don't have?
Yeah, well, first let's try to define L2. So L2, there are a lot of researchers that will be very passionate about what an L2 is. And to be honest, L2 is a very simple term. It's the word layer and the number two, right? And so really what they're passionate about is their product marketing definition, not, the technical components. The technical components are different. And so the way a lot of people define layer twos, for those that aren't really technical, I'll try to give you a high level explanation. There's the way L2s are defined by many people in the research community in Ethereum is a single node will run software that is reliant on the mainnet for the primary security. If you're running a blockchain next to Ethereum on top of it in a second layer, that wouldn't count because the consensus of that blockchain is responsible for the security. Okay, so now I think the question then is not like, well, what's an L2 or what's not, but like what and for what use cases, which one is better? And do you want to have a blockchain that has decentralization and a lot of parameters built in for security, or do you want to tie in the nuances that go into using these different L2 products? So and I think hey, this industry is very young. I think we're building a lot of tools to grow to have billions of users, and I think all of these tools are going to be very viable. And so what I'd say is Scale is a execution layer or activity layer for Ethereum, but you also have to realize that most of the Scale network's built on Ethereum. And so the security of the Scale network, so let's say you want a Scale chain, the Ethereum network goes to these nodes in the Scale network and it says, hey, you're going to form a blockchain, and it'll just go to the subset. And so if you were to say, well, hey, I want to try to get all of my nodes onto one chain because it's got $1 billion of value on it, I want to steal the money. Well, you need to be able to take over the Ethereum network in order to make that collusion happen on the Scale network. And so there's foundational security from Ethereum that then actually supports Scale. And you actually have to pay Ethereum gas fees in order to have that security take place to access your chains.
Yeah. So actually one thing you brought up that I had a question about is you mentioned with security, it's all about like the consensus that happens on the blockchain. So I was wondering, how does consensus work on Scale? Is it like the same way or?
It's a really good question. So I think with that, what I'll try to do is describe first the high level way the Scale network functions, and then how consensus plays a role. So most blockchains are a lot of nodes or computers. They're all running the same software. They're symmetrical. And what they do is they all speak to each other to come to an agreement that something is the truth or accurate. Okay. And that's when they do that, they come to consensus. And proof of work consensus is usually 51%. BFT consensus like Scale is a 2/3 agreement. And what that also means is 2/3 of those computers would need to be malicious in order for any money to be stolen. If greater than 1/3 is malicious, then the blockchain will lose liveliness. It'll stop. Okay. If less than 1/3 are malicious, the blockchain just runs smoothly. So with that premise in mind, the Scale network functions where there's all of these computers or nodes that work together, but they don't run consensus together. What they do is they act as kind of a hive, and at any given time, a subset of them can be paired together to run consensus and form a chain. And so let's say there's, right now there's 165 nodes in the Scale network. Each node can run on 8 different blockchains. And these nodes then are randomly assigned to each other by the Ethereum network, by these smart contracts in Ethereum. So let's say I want to run a DeFi application. I say, tell Ethereum, give me a Scale chain through this coding interface. I pay all these gas fees. The Ethereum network pings the Scale servers. The Scale servers randomly assign 16 of those nodes together, and those then run a blockchain. And so what you have then is a shard of a blockchain or a shard of a network, not the whole network. And let's say some of the nodes on that chain are bad. Well, they get cycled out and the network can heal and add new computers to that network. And there can be, the goal is to have thousands and thousands of these sharded or sub blockchains running on the Scale network, so that either use cases, there could be a DeFi blockchain where there's 50 DeFi apps running. There could be just one DeFi app that has its own chain. There could be an NFT chain. There could be a business that has a chain. A global brand could have a Scale chain and run a blockchain application on it. And the beauty is of this model is that it emulates the way the internet works today. So the internet works with not one monolithic database. It works with many databases uniquely connected that can message. And so when you look at something like Uber, let's say I take an Uber ride. Well, I dial in the Uber ride on my phone. That pings a database at Uber. Then I get in the car, I ride, I get to where I'm going, and then Uber says, okay, you owe this amount of money. It pings the Stripe database. Stripe pings Visa or my bank. It pings Bank of America, and then it goes back and it then sends money over to Chase Bank that Uber uses. And so all these different databases interact in about 1 second to 2 seconds, and that's how the internet works. It's an example. And so Scale, the way Scale it works to have all of these blockchains is that they can message back and forth to each other really quickly. And one, they can run ConsenSys and do it in a fast, lightweight manner, because there's not, the entire network of computers doesn't need to run one state. Subsets are running state and running the machine and gathering data. But then when they talk, we use this thing called threshold encryption or BLS threshold signatures, so that they can message without sending like this whole block of information. They can send this really lightweight message and update the other chain on what happened, just like Uber, would ping Stripe and Stripe pings Visa.
Got it. Okay. So when I'm hearing you talk about a lot of that, some of it is reminding me a lot of Polkadot. And so I'm wondering, like, comparing Scale to Polkadot, especially comparing like Scale's containerized nodes, or I think that's the terminology you guys use with like Polkadot's parachain model. What are some of like the main differences between the two?
Yeah, so main differences. So Polkadot, another great team and a multi-chain project. And so multi-chain is a category, and it's one we're going to hear a lot more of. And not to say anything negative about polychain, but right now polychain is maxing out, and so they're having to increase fees. And it's like a blockchain network is. Well, let's use Uber again. Let's say there's only 100 drivers in the city, and there's and it's almost free to use them. Well, pretty soon they're going to become maxed out, and there's going to be no rides, and you're waiting around forever. And that's how blockchains work, unless you have surge pricing. And that's why Ethereum gas fees go up when the network's overloaded. It's a surge price that only lets the people that pay the most gas fees win, right? And so what's happening in chains that don't have multi-chain environments can't elastically grow. They can't add more drivers to the city, okay? And so Polkadot takes an approach that's very similar to Cosmos, in that they have many, many drivers, but it's still a fixed amount. And I think you can run 100 chains roughly on Polkadot across the whole network. Now, these are all really powerful chains. But the way they do this is they have an auction to see who gets the chains, because they have a finite quantity of chains. And they still have a lot. They have a lot to give out. Cosmos does as well. But what they try to do then is say, hey, well, there's going to be one DeFi chain. There's going to be one gaming chain. There's going to be, and then they try to let people buy or rent these chains from the network for a certain price, and it's an incredibly high price. What Scale does, and I think it's maybe more similar to Dfinity, is that it can grow in a limitless fashion. And so instead of just having 100, there could be tens of thousands, because each time the network gets overloaded and the surge price goes up, what happens is the price goes up and you can set up a new server. And each time you can keep adding servers to the network can keep growing to meet the demand. Okay. And so that is, that's the premise, and that's a differentiating factor between Scale and Polkadot. One other unique element, and this is actually it's very different from side chains. So side chains, are not very secure. It's a blockchain that has a fixed set of nodes that runs, next to a big main chain, and there's maybe only 16 nodes, right? So on Scale, you could say, oh well, there's only 16 nodes on the chain, but guess what? All of the nodes are running on that chain are also running in all of these other places. And if someone were malicious on some other chain in the network, well, that node is penalized everywhere, not just on the node it was malicious on. So there's all this pooled security. And right now there's already over $1 billion staked in security on the Scale network. And so that pooled security lets smaller groups kind of have a herd immunity against bribery and collusion attacks.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically, the solutions that are present today, like before Scale came around, was you could, for instance, like go on Polkadot and then say, I'm building a DeFi dApp. And so I want to build on the DeFi parachain. But then there's other people building other dApps on that same chain. And so eventually you'll run into the same problem that we run into with Ethereum layer 1 today with these really high gas costs, and it's just not practical to actually do things. But then with Scale, everyone, like if I want to build a dApp, I can have my own chain in the Scale network that's like a layer 2 on top of Ethereum basically, but I don't have to share it with anybody else. And so then I can ensure that gas fees stay low like indefinitely. Is that like an oversimplified way of explaining that?
That is a really good way of describing it. And another big difference is Scale is just really anchored into Ethereum interoperability and the success of Ethereum. And whereas Polkadot is an Ethereum competitor, Scale, to use Scale, to stake Scale, to send a Scale token to somebody, to claim a staking reward, to rent a chain, where the stake is held, all that happens on Ethereum. And so what happens is it's like two businesses partnering, but they're not businesses, they're decentralized networks. And every time you pay Scale, there's money paid back to Ethereum constantly, instead of it just kind of parasitically drawing value out of the Ethereum network. And guess that matters because Ethereum is a community, and developers that build on Ethereum love Ethereum. They care about it. They don't just want to use EVM. They actually care about the movement, and so do we. And we end up having a lot of success with Ethereum developers because they know they're not leaving the ecosystem or the community by using Scale.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's actually something I was going to ask you, because I found one of your Twitter threads about like the difference between being Ethereum native and Ethereum interoperable. And I guess that's probably what you were just alluding to, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
No, I love it. You're reading my mind. You know where I'm going with this. Okay, so all of this, it sort of sounds like almost too good to be true. Are there any trade-offs, like any technical trade-offs of using these containerized nodes versus using like a roll-up solution or, like one of the other L2 solutions that are out there right now?
Yeah, one, it's just really tough to build this stuff. So we are finally have the first dApps live. We've been building it since 2017 with a team of just phenomenal set of geniuses that have all won math competitions and computer science competitions. And, we have an amazing engineering team and researchers building it. So that's the hard part, is it's not simple to build a multi-chain network. The other piece is that I think a long time ago, there was an initiative set forth that we will not scale Ethereum with other blockchains. We need to figure out other solutions. And that's why Plasma was a big thing. As an Ethereum community member, my issue with that being a whole strategy is just blockchains are actually really valuable. And they do have great security premises, especially if you can use pooled security like I'm talking about. These aren't the same issues that were brought forth when we were at 2017 and had just single side chains running, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is a horrible thing. These 10 people can just steal all this money." It's very different than a network. I think if you would have told someone in 2017, "Hey, there'll be, a network that has $1 billion in staked value and it's got all these security properties. I think people would be like, whoa, that's actually a great thing. And but the other piece is I think there's a misconception that other blockchains are always competitive to Ethereum and that rollups aren't. And so part of it goes into this kind of emotional place in people's hearts where they're like, well, rollups aren't another blockchain. They're these servers that run and then they send things back to the mainnet to be finalized. And, so they're not competing with Ethereum. But the reality is an Ethereum native chain isn't competing with Ethereum either. It's just extending its reach, and it's still using a blockchain because at the end of the day, if a node that was running a rollup was compromised, and let's say it was a ZK rollup, and the developer who was in charge of that just went rogue and decided to secretly shift the code to then steal a bunch of money. Well, what's there to stop them, right? When you're trusting the code, and and then you can say, oh, well, that wouldn't happen. But the point of blockchains is that you have, a fail-safe, like 2/3 of the node operators would have to go bad in order for any money to actually be stolen. So that's what I'd say is when, it's like, it's too good to be true. It's more like the narrative right now was set a long time ago. And it was also set before we had like this huge validator community. It's a in 2017, if everyone had said, hey, guess what? In 2021, there are going to be about 100 companies that run $146 billion of stake value. And these companies, these 100 companies, if any one of them's malicious on Solana or Scale or Avalanche or Near or Cosmos or Polkadot, they're going to lose their business on every other business. So there's almost a pooled 146 billion because there's so much overlap in the companies that run all of these networks. And I think if people knew that data point too, then there also would have been a different way of setting out to how to solve Ethereum's growth issues. And again, it's all back to like, hey, if we have a rideshare platform in a city and there's only a certain amount of drivers, how do you fix that problem without, while still keeping the rides affordable?
Right. Yeah. So now that Scale is live, like what do you anticipate happening next? Do you anticipate like all these devs that are currently on Polkadot, Cosmos, other using other solutions, just hopping on a Scale? Do you anticipate other people trying to develop like something similar to Scale? Where do you see, if you had to sort of guess, like predict the future, where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, well, one thing I'll tell you is that if you look at, Polygon used to be Matic, and they switched to a Scale proof of stake model, similar, where they have, their staking is on the mainnet. All of these network security functions are on the mainnet. They ended up launching it before us, and I think it was a really positive to see that people, embraced it. They weren't like, oh, well, it's not a rollup, I'm not going to use it. No, they're using it to the extent that it's full. And I know they also want to be multi-chain someday, and they have a similar vision. So that's an example of this being like, I think, product market fit being here and people saying, hey, this works. The other thing is it's just, the cost of running transactions is just so low compared to other networks. I think it's just hard for people to compete with that. But to get to your question, will developers come from, Cosmos and Polkadot? I don't really think so. I think they're kind of there in those worlds and they're developing their own communities. What I see is like 90% of the blockchain developers and businesses are building on Ethereum, and we have 100 plus lined up that are ready to go live. So we're just kind of focused on those ones, and we want to make them successful. And those are in DeFi, NFT, Web3, and gaming. Those are the main categories. So it's just that's where we're focusing. We're just kind of focusing on helping Ethereum developers. And the advantage is we talk to these big companies that are building NFT platforms and NFT products, and you know what? They want to know okay, well, what wallet does everyone use? How can the most people access my system? And you know what? They use Ethereum. And it's just and hey, I have a lot of good friends that run other blockchains and are building other blockchains. And I think they're adding value because they're also bringing in more developers and more companies and out doing business development. And, there's just a lot of room for growth for everybody. But, there's just so much happening in Ethereum that it's more than we could ever, hope to, we're not worried about pulling people off of their other places.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you on that. And you mentioned like there's already, a lot of developers in like DeFi, NFTs, gaming, all these different spaces building on Scale. I'd love to hear some of like your favorite projects that you're seeing being built on Scale right now.
Yeah, so the NFT launches, I mean, I unfortunately have I can't we're going to have there'll be big announcements and we're under NDAs because there's going to be about six major like global brands launching really cool stuff. So I'm spending probably half my time right now on NFTs. And what I'll say is one of the interesting things about NFTs is NFTs on Scale is you can mint NFTs for free. And then because Scale is a containerized blockchain, there's actually a sub-container in every Scale chain that can be used for file storage. So you don't need to leave the blockchain to store files or images or videos or other pieces of content. And those images can also be affiliated to the smart contract. And essentially you can create an NFT right on the Scale chain for free, which it cuts out about 10 steps of like connecting to this IPFS gateway and then having this other vendor and making sure the file will be there. And then where is the file? Is the file then, it's actually on a centralized server somewhere. It cuts all that stuff out. And so it's going to be a major market for us. So that's one really, I think, positive, exciting area. Also, decentralized finance is really interesting. So we've got some really awesome, the ones I can announce already. So Ruby and Boot Finance, and those are two that I think are going to have a huge impact right out of the gates. They're proven DeFi teams. They're getting ready to have their own big announcements. I don't want to say too much. But there'll be a major DeFi launch in September on Scale with AMMs and the whole set of DeFi. It's like if there's a new town getting set up, you need a gas station and a car dealership and a hospital, and like that's kind of how DeFi works when these new blockchains go live with support. And so those will all go live in September, along with some big blue chips that have a multi-chain strategy that I think people see them going on other major networks. Those will also go live. So we're excited about that. The other category is just, another interesting DeFi use case it's called Covey. And, it's a Goldman Sachs team that then left to start this product that it's a decentralized trading platform where you can, in this like simulated environment, trade, and all your trades are tracked on the blockchain and all the data is open and transparent. And what people can do is they can actually build up a track record of their trades. And this right now, some of the biggest hedge funds in the world are using this service, one to help with their recruiting. So if they're going to recruit somebody from a university, they tell them to use the product so they have a profile. And they can like figure out if they should hire them as an investment banker or a trader or whatever the role would be. The other category is that it creates all this alpha that the hedge funds find valuable. So it's an interesting use case where this all lives on a blockchain. But Covey.io, that's an exciting use case. And we had an announcement. Ivy Cash is another one where it's a real-time transfer of assets. So all I do, you can have something and a QR code, and you scan my QR code, you then own that. And you think about it, most use cases for blockchain are like really securing things and plugging your ledger into MetaMask and sending it. But imagine all the use cases it opens up if you have this low cost transfer. Imagine if you're at a concert or a festival, or you're at Burning Man, or you're at a sporting event, or a conference, and all the things you could do with blockchain transferred QR codes where it's the opposite. There's little friction compared to great friction. So I'm not going to send somebody 1 Bitcoin that way, but I might send them, a pass to an event later. I might send them, might be a ticket to go to, to get into a conference. It might be a drink ticket at an event. And it just lets things interact through blockchain in a very user experience friendly manner, where if you use that same smart contract on the mainnet, probably costs $100 a transaction. And it's just free on Scale.
Yeah. I mean, I'm super big into NFTs, and I have been feeling that pain point very deeply. And so the NFT stuff is super cool and exciting to me. I just thought of another quick question too, as you were talking, is Scale pretty easy for, like, say, a company that's already been around for a couple years, they're built on Ethereum, and they're like currently looking at L2 solutions or something? Would Scale be a good option for them to, like, continue building on, or is it better for new projects to launch on Scale?
Oh yeah, it's incredibly easy for them to move over to Scale. So it's literally 2 lines of code redirects the way that the port and the IP address of how they point to the blockchain. And then if they want to then they can easily kind of batch over the data. So they can pull the data over. So there's a starting point for all the addresses, and they can be up and running in a day. So Minds, for example, Minds is the largest decentralized social network. They've got, I think, 5 million daily active users. Minds.com. They're on mainnet, and they also run a kind of internal, kind of centralized side chain that will be porting over to Scale. And it's an incredibly easy process for them to move over and connect. That's an exciting use case, where doing something like they're doing before was really difficult to actually do in a decentralized manner. And now they can do this in a fully decentralized manner, which is really where the power of a decentralized network is. If you're kind of faking it, you're not really there. So that's pretty cool.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Last question for you. I like to ask every guest this, but if you could, pick yourself up and put yourself in the future, 10 years into the future, where do you see us being with blockchain technology and crypto in general? Like, how do you see people using this in their day-to-day lives? Like, in your perfect world, if all goes, quote unquote, according to plan, it keeps developing at the breakneck pace that it has been, where do you see us being with all of this in 10 years?
Yeah. So I remember, in 2018, when we were really, we had our feet under us at Scale, we're out talking about this, and I was telling everyone in 10 years, we're going to be at this amazing inflection point where blockchains permeate everything we do. People literally thought I was crazy. They just even in 2018, people were like, no, come on, there's going to be only maybe 100,000 users, and they're like heavy decentralized finance users, or businesses will connect to do these things. And it's kind of similar to the way people underestimated how mobile phones would grow. and I think now, like, here we are, 2021, just 3 years later, but look at everything that's happening, right? Would you ever expect, like, Visa buying an NFT and making all this news? It would be a thing, right? So we're really at this point where we're still early, but we're getting ready to hit the knee of the curve, and that's how tech works. And I kind of felt like, hey, 2018, we're going to be this crazy place in 2028, but it would take 5 years to really hit that growth. And so I think we're still 2 years out from the knee of the curve, and then get ready. I think blockchains will essentially be the fabric behind the internet of all the applications we use, because people actually care about who owns their data. They care about profit sharing. They care about ownership. They care about security, right? And these are the things that you're like, oh, they're not that big of a deal. But you talk to somebody in their early 20s, or I go to all these events in San Francisco, and I'm just so impressed by the young people and the depth of knowledge they already have. And that's when an industry is really going to boom, because when those same people are 30, do you think they're going to want to use things that aren't blockchains? They're like, oh, we'll just let Mark Zuckerberg control everything. No, that's not the world people want to live in.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I totally hear you on that. And I think it's like, it's an impossible question, right? It's impossible to predict where we're going to be in 10 years. It's hard to even predict where we're going to be in 1 year, judging by how fast things have been going so far. But awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jack, for being here. Yeah.
I had to ask you, what do you think?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't know. I'm like so shocked by everything that's been happening already with NFTs blowing up. I mean, I think the next big thing, I think NFTs are here to stay and here to keep booming in just like different areas and new use cases coming up for them. I think that's definitely going to be huge. I think social tokens will be huge too after that. So I think those are the things that we're going to be seeing in the next years, probably like gaming and NFTs, that intersection, like in-game NFT items. I think, like people are going to start realizing, oh, we can combine DeFi with NFTs, with DAOs, with like all these different concepts. And I think we're going to see like more, projects that combine different elements of crypto and aren't strictly an NFT project or strictly a DeFi project. And then, yeah, I'm super bullish on NFTs just because I think like that the cultural and the social elements of NFTs, that is what's going to bring the mainstream into crypto. Like the financial stuff has been around for over a decade. That has drawn in the people that it's going to draw in. But there's, the majority of people out there like don't really care about finance, don't really, care about investing in stocks and things like that. So you're not going to get them with like the all the DeFi stuff necessarily. But NFTs, I mean, the culture and the social aspects of it, that's something that all human beings can relate to. So that's why I'm super bullish on NFTs.
I agree. I've spent half my day working on NFTs, and it's because every single major brand right now is building an NFT strategy. So get ready. We're just getting started.
Yeah. Well, that actually ties us very well into our final segment, which I call Explain Your Tweet. This is where I go through your Twitter and I pull out some interesting or cryptic tweets and I give you a chance to explain them on the pod. So this first one I have, that was the perfect segue. This is from August 16th, 2021. You said, I'm spending about a fourth of my time working on NFT efforts. NFTs are booming, but we are only scratching the surface. Almost every major brand and IP holder is forming an NFT strategy right now. Smart brands will use NFTs to drive functional utility, not just digital ownership. So yeah, I mean that I totally agree with that, but feel free to, expand on that further.
So the interesting piece of that is I was spending a fourth of my time a week ago. I'm spending a half my time now.
Right.
Okay. We already talked about but that's all I'll say is that literally every major brand is building a strategy, and we're honored to be being pulled into those conversations and have a great be able to, as a core team, to support a network that can support low cost NFT creation, zero cost to end users, and storage right on the chain. So that's it's going to be an exciting next 12 months for NFTs.
Yeah, for sure. I've got another tweet for you too. This one is from January 28th. So we're going all the way back to the beginning of this year. And this ties in with our whole like prediction speculation discussion from like 5 minutes ago. But you tweeted on January 28th, you said, the ownership economy will capture the headlines of the latter half of 2021. Why? Marketplaces should be owned and controlled by participants rather than investors. User-controlled marketplaces will grow faster and become more valuable than investor-controlled marketplaces. So now that we are in the latter half of 2021, would you say that your prediction was accurate, not accurate, somewhere in the middle?
So what I would say is maybe I don't know how far behind I am, but get ready for next month. I mean, keep your eye on a project called Brain Trust. Okay. They're going to be launching on Scale. You can go read a lot about them right now. They are absolutely dominating the work talent place arena for technical talent. So if you want to hire outsourced technical talent, typically, let's say I spend $100,000 and I'm, Nike, I need a data scientist for the website. And so I'll hire somebody, this really amazing person in some other country. I pay $100,000 to TopTal or to, Manpower or some big company. Well, guess what? $50,000 goes to the company and $50,000 only goes to the talent. On Brain Trust, $90,000 goes to the talent and $10,000 goes into having to buy Brain Trust tokens, and then that go to the talent and to all these other people in the community. So they are having, they've already launched, but their token is launching. And I think you're going to see a phenomenal amount of news around just that one example. And there are so many that are similar to them that are launching that I think are going to just, and at the end of the day, user-owned marketplaces will beat centrally owned ones. It's just, as long as they have the right level of coordination, support, and service, which, that's the beauty of having smart contracts and different organizations that are incentivized by tokens to facilitate them. But get ready for that. So
I'm excited. I'm all for that. So I cannot wait. Well, thank you so much, Jack, for coming on the podcast, taking the time to do this. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope I learned a lot of new things. I hope our listeners did as well. Before you go, just tell people where they can find you if they want to connect with you personally. And then also, if any devs are listening, how can they get in touch with your team so that they can start building on Scale?
Yeah, great question. So one, if you go to scale.network, you can find access to all the links, and scale.chat will take you to the Discord, or go to scale.network and that will take you to the Discord. If you're a dev, we're all there. Please come talk to us. You can find me on Twitter at Jack O'Halloran.
Perfect. And that's Scale with a K, SKALE. If you're watching the video, it's very obvious from Jack's shirt. But if you're listening to the audio version, it's SKALE, Scale. Awesome. Thanks so much, Jack, again. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll be back again soon with another episode of the Unstoppable Podcast.